It's a tricky place. You've got to learn to surf really the top half of the wave at Bells. Shane Dorian said it really well. No kook's ever won Bells.
So there's a lot of people who've never been to Torquay. They've never surfed Winky and Bells, and I have trouble describing the difference. I would love to hear what your take is on the difference between the wave at Bells and the wave at Winky. And I know Bells is many waves, but tell us what you think about all that.
Well, as a goofy footer, it's a challenge. Both places, but a different challenge. What I really found, particularly when I first came down here, was just how different Bells and Winky are.
Yeah.
They really are very different waves. Winky can give you really good tubes, but it's long, it's down the line. Whereas Bells is a really tricky wave, and one of the things that I often talked about when I was at Rip Curl and dealing with mainstream media people is how tricky it is to learn. And kind of that brings me to the list of champions for the Bells comp, both men and women. You look at those lists, not only are they the longest lists of champions for a single event
For sure.
on the tour, but it's literally the who's who of surfing over the last 50 years.
Absolutely.
Shane Dorian said it really well. No kook's ever won Bells. When he won it, he was just like so stoked.
Yeah,
and, Shane, obviously an awesome surfer, and his win was something I'll remember because of that quote and how spot on it is. It takes people generally 2 to 3 years at least to get to partly understand Bells. Often watching the contest over 18, 19 consecutive years, I would sit with Doug Warbrick, one of the founders of Rip Curl, and he would be frustrated because the surfers would often not get right out to the peak at Bells when it was bigger. And he'd say they're missing half the wave, and that's true because it is a tricky place to line up. When it's 6 to 8 feet, tide really affects it. But to me, Bells it's a great challenge. Lots of the surfers say it's not a great wave, and it's not.
It's a dud wave, It's the most overrated wave in the world. It's a big mush burger.
When you think about some of the other breaks on tour, Choco, Pipeline, Jeffreys Bay, we're going back to G-Land this year. As a wave, Bells is not in that class, but as a challenge for elite level surfers, it's a serious challenge. It's a tricky place. You've got to learn to surf really the top half of the wave at Bells. You don't. The best performers realise you can't do your long delayed bottom turn. You've got to race that wall, and you've got to stay, in the upper 2/3 of the wall.
Yeah.
It gives great opportunity for a mix of turns, and that is another great thing. And the other is that being at Easter, we generally do get some swell, so that's always a good thing.
10 days is a waiting period on this. I think we'll get waves. I mean, it's consistently been good in this time of the year. And what I like is I've been watching the surf report, and it looks small all the way up. So I like when the ocean has a little dead period before we jump into it. And remember, 2019 had some big waves for part of that contest. And even Simon's 1981 year, he ended up in the finals against Shane Horan in like 2 to 3 foot surf. They were, and he beat him, which at the time was kind of miraculous. But I think that we'll get I think we'll get a cross section of all of that, and I think it'll be good. I hope it'll be good, like in the years past.
Yeah, the fact that it hasn't run for the last 2 years, the local community's so keen to see them back here, and that's one of the other great things about Bells, and in fact, any of the WSL venues, pretty much, that recreational surfers can go out and surf with.
It's unreal. Yeah.
With you don't get rookie drivers on a Formula One track,
right.
While the Formula One drivers are practicing. But in surfing, the fact that happens, the local grommets just froth on Easter, and
For sure.
It just reminds me of the excitement of, being there every morning, and Hell's Bells playing AC/DC, getting that, I guess, that atmosphere happening. And, there's nothing better than turning up at Bells in the dark and hearing the swell and the lines. And then as the sun comes up, beautiful light on the cliffs and great waves.
Yeah. I really appreciate your description of Bells and Winki. And I loved what you said about Bells in that it's very similar to me in the description of what Sunset would be. A wave that is tricky, a lot of people don't like, but it really proves who's a champion. And also, as Claude was saying, a lot of guys at Sunset and a lot of the men and women weren't at the peak if we just witnessed this. And so they're tricky waves, and I think that they need to be on tour. I think that a world champion should have these in their back pocket.
Absolutely. In my mind, Sunset is one of the world's great waves.
Same. I believe that too.
It's an epic place. Rip Curl sponsored WQS and WCT events at Sunset.
Yeah.
We always thought it was absolutely worthy. It's a great test. The surfers who don't like Sunset, they just haven't put in the time, because if you talk to anybody who's made the effort to get out to Sunset, it'll give you the worst beating of your life, but it'll also give you, incredible rides.
Yeah.
And, I've surfed it a bunch of times. I love the place. It's crazy because it just keeps you on edge constantly. You don't know where the next set's coming from, if you're going to get caught inside or not. And there's a bit of that in Bells.
Yeah.
But to my mind, they're both great challenges and really important stops on the world tour.
This is a question I'm dying to ask. Have you held the Bells trophy? Like any of the recent Bells trophies? Like, tell me what it feels like. Are they heavy? Did you ring that bell?
I've never deliberately rung the bell.
Right.